Okay, so today's session, we have come to our fourth class. So what we're going to focus on today is understand cybersecurity testing. So as given from our indicative content, today we're going to evaluate the importance of completing vulnerability testing on a network, evaluate the importance of scheduling simulated attacks on a network, and then we'll conclude by explaining how to configure and test application and the network securities. So moving on with the first learning outcome, we all need to understand that testing network vulnerability is simply assessing how the process can help and review and analyze how these endpoint devices network are connected and what could be the possible issues with these endpoint devices. So by running this this assessment, we will now be able to detect network issues, or for example, network leaks where attacks might occur. Also, the VA primary goals is to unearth any vulnerabilities that can compromise the organizational overall security and operation. So we vulnerability test already looked into what could be the benefits of doing this assessment. So the image right here explains just a simple explanation of how network vulnerability works, where there are a couple of aspects such as lack of patch management, unmanaged mobile devices, poorly configuration of outdated firewall rules, weak of default password, and also inside privilege measures. So if we have to run this assessment, we have to initially classify them and see which type of analysis has to be done. So we could initially start with risk identification, where the aim is to identify all the assets that are part of the information system. So we initially check what are the technologies, what are the information system in place within the organization. And once we've created this report, this initial assessment, we now have we can now understand what we have now identified where we're going to run our tests. Now, after that, we have to look into develop vulnerability scan policies, where we already know that these policies or procedures should have an official owner that is responsible for the activities. So whoever is in charge of writing the report has to ensure that all the specifications and all the policy has to be fully covered within the report. And then we can also identify the type of scans that we're going to run. It's depending on what type of vulnerability test we're going to conduct, we must have the respective and related scan, which for instance could be network scan, host base, wireless base, and applications. The following process are simply configuration and perform the scan. And then we'll end up having, we can finally conclude with an evaluation and consideration of possible risks. So by doing all these steps, we have now completed a life cycle where we have identified, reported and conducted the scan and collected all the useful data that we need. Now, when it comes to look into the importance of vulnerability assessment test, we need to understand that they're really useful to detect security weakness, which we'll explain with the example of the endpoint. Also, the importance for inventories list of all devices on the network. They're also useful for list of vulnerabilities for each single device, and there are a good use for future upgrades. They also establish security record for the late assessment. So all these characters, all these features are mainly used in every type of network test. So they're pretty much going to be done depending on the nature of the test that's to be done. Now we're going to evaluate the importance of scheduling simulation of attacks into these networks. So by looking into them, there are several main steps that have to be carried out. These steps are such as information gathering, attack and penetration, local information gathering, privilege escalation, pivoting, and cleanup. So as we can see, by information gathering is simply depend on the ability of gather relevant information about our network, as we mentioned from the life cycle of network vulnerability. These are all steps that they work simultaneously. So some of the information that has to be gathered could be active IP address, operation systems, and if we have to look into them, there are several actions which has to be realized within these phases. And these actions are network discovery, where we're going to perform this mechanism, including ARP, TCP, and SYN packets. This network discovery will allow us now to retrieve IP addresses, for example, and then we'll be able to run the scans. So, for example, port scan is an exhaustive scan of open and closed ports of all these network hosts. And also there are operating system identification, which consists in recognizing the operating system of a remote host by analyzing its responses to a set of tests. And also it's important to understand other available techniques used for human attack or even social engineering. So related to the main tasks, there are attack and penetrate, which is simply during this phase, the attacker will select and launch remote exploitation by making use of data obtained from the information gathering step. And then we have local information gathering, which sounds really different from the previous one, where these steps is simply collects information about the computer the attacker has successfully compromised. So this is a step down, is coming after the attacks. And then we have privilege escalation and pivoting, whereby privilege escalation is where the attackers have attempted to penetrate into deep level and compromise our network security, our computer security. And he has already run several exploitations in order to assess and gain the administrative privilege of our computer. While for pivoting, it stands for the attack that can use the newly controlled host and has vantage points from which to run attackers deeper into the network, where by simply sending instruction to an installed agent, the attacker can run local exploitations to attack the system internally rather than from across the network. So we pivot in, these attacks happens remotely without gaining access directly to the local network. And then the last step is cleanup, where now the attacker has to clean all the trace of the attack that they've done in order to avoid any type of detection by softwares, antivirus, anti-malware softwares. Now we have to look into the benefits of scheduling simulated attacks. A couple of these benefits are now able to identify the issues, or we could also increase specific awareness of phishing threats. And then we can also deliver security training metrics for staff and employees. You also build knowledge base where people are gaining more knowledge and more awareness of these type of social engineering attacks. So this image just summarizes how, for instance, phishing attacks works, where they create, for example, an email. Then, as part of a social engineering attack, they'll create an email, define a landing page, define the target, the victim, launch the campaign for the social engineering attack, monitor the activity, and then analyze the results. Now, here we have an example of Office 360 attack simulator, where with Microsoft Office is now able to simulate a cyber attack, where in this life cycle they can identify the threat, explore the relationship with the social engineering attack, and then simulate an attack. So underneath, there's also attached a link to access this simulation, which can be conducted anytime. And now we're going to explain how to configure and test an application and network security. So these are the stages that has to be done. So the stages is monitor access control management. So with this management system, we can control critical aspect that helps to protect the application security, where where we can see the main features, the main two important part of this management system is to identify authentication. So we have to authenticate who we are, and authorization, which will allow the access to authorized users to access this monitoring system. Also, there is a dynamic analysis, which is also called penetration testing, where we have introduced in our first tutorial, where I even showed some good certification related penetration testing. And with penetration testing, there are several steps to follow. These several steps are data location and data collection, vulnerability assessment, launch simulated attack, and then report preparation. So with penetration testing, we can now have this life cycle that will allow us to penetrate and test in depth our software. And once we have done this test, we can now report, make a really detailed report. Also, there are static analysis and session management. So with the first one is usually performed as part of a white box testing, and it is also carried out to highlight potential vulnerabilities within a static source code, where by static we know that these source codes do not mute over the time. And then there is a session management, where we can see that the security testing has been conducted manually to ensure and perform session management test and check the application in handling session properly. Also, we have check server access control, where with this test, the web application have multiple user access points that can provide enough access to fulfill users' requirements, and they mainly contain security to avoid data breaches or attacks. So the way that this test can be conducted is with testers that should ensure that all the intra-networks and intra-network and inter-network access points to the application have been expected machines. And then additionally, a variety of real-time transactions should be performed into book to check the application performance under a load of conditions. So it's really important to check server access controls to ensure that the server cannot be easily compromised. Also, there is ingress, egress, and entry points test, where often these network points has to be tested to ensure that unauthorized networks can send traffic or information to the host network and vice versa. And then there is password management and brute force attack, where by password management, is simply various methods used to discover password and access user controls or systems. Also, there is brute force attack, which we already looked into the first tutorial, which is simply the process of guessing different combinations of targeted password until we discover the right one. And then we have SQL injection, which this technique is used to inject malicious structured query language statements into any type of application, and which will allow to modify and extract and manipulate the data which are stored within databases. Then there are cross-site script, which is the client-side injection attack, where we now execute malicious malware or script into the victim browser, and is now possible to gain access to the data of this client, the web browser. There are also URL manipulation, which basically allows to modify the parameters of the URL for malicious purpose by any type of hacker. And also we have specify high-risk function. So this image just shows the principles of security testing. So this principle all together, all of them put together, are going to create this this process, these features that are really important when we have to conduct security testing. So now, in order for us to summarize, we're going to look into the key area of security testing, where we have to ensure that we have a really strong system software security. At the same time, yes, we have to ensure for our network security, server-side application security, and obviously our client-side application security. So we've come to an end for our session of today, and what we will look into in the next tutorial will be the next tutorial. We're going to understand how to manage a cyber attack.
Okay.
By doing so, we will see all the steps that has to be taken: communication methods, root cause analysis, changes in cybersecurity working place. So this is everything. Is there any question for me?
No, Victor, nothing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye-bye.